Hello and welcome. I'm Jason Brock, and today I'm going to be doing a story about a murder in the music industry. Hello, I'm Jason Brock, and this is my first episode in the series I'm doing called Dark Music or Midnight Song or something like that. I want to do stuff that's like sort of about true crime, but still in the music industry. So, with that said, I'm starting with this one, the murder of John Lennon. He was very important, as you probably know. He was a member of the Beatles. I'm not going to talk a lot about the Beatles, but I'm going to talk about John Lennon and how he was murdered, who he was murdered by, a little bit of the backstory involved, and the characters involved, including Yoko Ono. John Lennon, great songwriter. I love his music. You've heard the songs, like Imagine, that's probably my favorite. I don't think I should sing it because that's probably like copyright violation or whatever. I'm not going to do that in this video. John Lennon was born October 9th, 1940 in Liverpool, England at Liverpool Maternity Hospital to his parents Julia and Alfred, aka Alf. What a great nickname. Middle name was Winston after Winston Churchill. His father, Alf or Alfred, often was away from home, and John was primarily taken care of by his mother. So Alfred and his mom were living together most of the time, and he had a close relationship with his mother. One day, Alfred came home again, and he said, "Hey, I want to take care of the family again. I want to rejoin you guys." And his mother was having none of that, and she said, "Sorry, we don't want you. We don't need you." Well, I don't think she could speak for John, but she spoke for herself, and she wasn't interested in Alfred coming back into the family, taking care of her and John. Why, do you ask? Well, there was a little bit of backstory there. She happened to be pregnant with the child of another man, so she was having an affair. So she didn't want to be together as a family anymore. But how's she going to get that paycheck? Wait, she might have had a job. I don't know. Anyway, his mother, John Lennon's mother, Julia, started living with this guy, John Bobby Dickens, or Dickens. I think it's Dickens. However, Julia's sister, John Lennon's aunt, Mimi, became concerned about John's living situation. What exactly was going on in the house? I don't know. Maybe it was just I think they were like all sleeping in the same bed, like John and his mom and the new lover. Is that so bad? I mean, I don't know. If you're poor, maybe you have no other choice. But anyway, Mimi didn't like it, John Lennon's aunt. So she reported them to the Child Protective Services. And she called them twice. In the meantime, when John Lennon was about 5 or 6 years old, his father, Alf, came to visit him. And he wanted to take him on a vacation for a couple weeks. In Blackpool, England, they were going to spend a little time together, father-son bonding. However, it had been reported that his father actually wanted to take him away and move to New Zealand. I don't know why New Zealand. Why did they think of New Zealand? What would they do there? I don't know. I couldn't find that information, but why New Zealand? Anyway, that didn't happen because John's mother, Julia, went to go find him in Blackpool. When she found his father and John, they started fighting over who should take care of John. And it turned out somehow that the mother got custody, Julia. So, custody, maybe not official, but she won the fight and she took John back. Apparently, these fights happened more than once. And one time, there is a story that John Lennon was forced to decide between his mom and his dad. Really tough choice, and he was really upset by that. But then some people say that never happened. But can you imagine having to choose between your father and mother? Like, that would be horrible. If I had to choose when I was a kid, it would have been easy. Mom! My dad, let's not even go there. So Julia had John at her house. She was taking care of him. But then she decided for some reason she wanted to give him to her sister, Mimi. So Mimi was happy because Mimi always wanted a kid, so I've read. And she gladly took care of John. And from then on, she actually took care of John until he was, I don't remember, like in his teen years, but we'll get there. Oh, and Mimi was married to George, John's uncle, and apparently they had a pretty good relationship. George actually gave him a mouth organ, which kind of encouraged his music, but I don't know what a mouth organ is because I Googled it. And it looks like a harmonica qualifies as a mouth organ, but is that the only kind of mouth organ? Are there others? Don't ask me about mouths and organs. That's another topic. So apparently John Lennon wasn't a perfect child. He wasn't the most well-behaved. He apparently shoplifted, bullied other kids, and he even made fun of he even made fun of disabled people. Like, it sounds like he did that especially when he was younger. Like going up to them and making fun of them right to their face. That would not fly in today's world. But anyway, even though John Lennon lived with his Aunt Mimi and Uncle George, his mom Julia would come visit him quite a lot. Julia would play him music. She played him Elvis Presley and they would listen to that together. And she taught him how to play the banjo. I didn't even know he could play the banjo. In 1956, around 16 years old, John's mother bought him his first guitar. Julia encouraged him to play music and to pursue music. Unlike his Aunt Mimi said, "Oh, there's no money in that. You're not going to make a living." Ha! Boy, was she wrong. But I get it. It is hard to make a living as a musician. And I'd probably tell my kid the same. Think twice about that. But pursue your dream if you want to be poor. But anyway, pursue your dream. Yes, pursue it. Okay, and this is one of the sad turns of the story. Unfortunately, and I didn't know this before research, I bet a lot of people don't know this, John Lennon's mom was killed by a car as she was crossing the street by an undercover police officer. Isn't that strange? The police officer said she just ran out in front of him. And, he wasn't speeding or anything. The reports say he was not speeding. So was she trying to kill herself or was it just an accident? We'll never know. But I thought that was pretty strange. And it affected John Lennon a lot. He was very sad about his mom dying and became violent and started drinking. And I don't know, he was really going through it, I can understand that because, I've lost a parent too. And I know how it is. And I was a kid, so yeah. So after this, he finished high school. He wasn't doing well. He wasn't getting good grades. But he couldn't get into a college except his aunt and uncle helped him. Like they talked to the dean or something like that. And he got into an art college. But unfortunately, he didn't do well in there either. And he got kicked out. John Lennon, the John Lennon was kicked out of art college. But anyway, apparently he was too cool and wearing cool clothes and I don't know what all he was doing. But I read the clothes he wore were actually a big deal. I guess it was kind of rebellious. But I looked at some pictures and it looks like, what do you call it, beatnik or rockabilly, I don't know. But then the amazing thing happened. He started a band. He may have started a few. He got super famous with the Beatles. And this is the part I'm not going into detail on because it's the Beatles and, everyone knows about that. And if you don't, just look it up. It's everywhere. But, he became like a legend, an icon. So during and after the Beatles, he was married 2 times. The first wife was Cynthia. The second wife is Yoko Ono, who I find very interesting because she's Japanese and I live in Japan. So I'm like, wow, cool. She left America, left Japan and went to America, started her life there, and met John Lennon, and then they got married. Yoko Ono was born right here in Tokyo, Japan. She was born on February 18th, 1933. She came from a wealthy family, very wealthy. She went to good schools, had all these lessons and different things. Anyway, she decided to move to New York with her family in her 20s. Yoko, as you may know, of course she sang or she sings, but she also was an artist and an activist, and she's done a lot of famous works. You can look them up as well. She is very creative, and I think that's a reason for the connection between John and her, at least in part, beyond the physical attraction. They met at an exhibit in London in 1966. They ended up hitting it off, even though John was still married at the time, and they started an affair. I would never. There's a famous story of Yoko was staying over with John Lennon, and his wife came home and found her wearing her bathrobe, and she was just like, "Hi," something like that. Uh, that would be horrible. Oh, if that happened to me, I would be totally pissed. So after the affair was discovered, Cynthia and John Lennon got divorced, and Yoko and John got married. They had a child together, a very good musician as well, Sean Lennon. And by the way, John and Cynthia had a child too, Julian Lennon. By the way, you can find Sean Lennon's music all around too, so check that out if you've never heard of him. And Julian. So Yoko and John did music together. Some people say that she is the reason the Beatles broke up, so she's kind of a controversial figure among Beatles fans. But I've heard it both ways. Some people say that's true, that she took the attention away from John and he left, or other things. But I've also heard that John already wanted to leave and it had nothing to do with Yoko. So whatever. There's lots of conspiracy theories out there. John and Yoko were together until 1980. They were together 14 years. It was a really long run, in my opinion. 14 years. I can't imagine. But that would all come to an end in 1980. And it wasn't a divorce. It was something much worse. Enter Mark David Chapman. He's just seeming kind of like a normal guy born in Fort Worth, Texas, close to where I was born. He was born on May 10th, 1955. His dad was in the Air Force and his mom was a nurse. His father was apparently abusive to his mother, and he was apparently afraid of him while he was growing up. I totally get that. I mean, I was afraid of my dad too. Because that's what happens when people are abusive. You're scared of them. Mine was an alcoholic too. I don't know about his. But things are not actually so normal with Mark Chapman. In fact, he supposedly could control little imaginary people in his bedroom walls. Yeah, I think he might have been schizophrenic or something. But yeah, he definitely had mental health issues. He wasn't great at sports. He was bullied at school. He eventually started using drugs as well. But you can find pictures and even audio clips of him singing and playing guitar. He was actually a musician, not like a famous musician, but he did enjoy music. And funny enough, he enjoyed the Beatles. Over time, family life was bad. He was using drugs, so he started skipping school, and then he even tried to run away from home. It was obviously not a happy childhood. And even though there's a lot of us who have unhappy childhoods that come out and we're okay, or at least okay enough, we don't kill people, Mark was a little bit different. Interestingly, he became a camp counselor and people really loved him. He even got awards for being a camp counselor, and he was beloved. He was appreciated. People really liked him. I find that strange with his mental health issues and the fact that he did something really horrible to John Lennon. I wonder how he fit in so well. Apparently he had become a Christian, so maybe that was part of it. Maybe it was something that helped him, at least for a little while. But yeah, I guess he was really doing well in his Christian camp counselor life. But soon he decided to read a book that a friend recommended. And this book is pivotal to the story because it changed the way he thought about the world, and it inspired him to do something very horrible. The book is called The Catcher in the Rye. And I've never read this book. Maybe you haven't either. But it's about a teenager who feels that people are fake and he doesn't like all the fakeness in the world. I'm sure a lot of us can identify with that because we see a lot of fakeness in the world. I mean, look at Instagram. So Mark David Chapman, he continued to work with kids. He even worked with Vietnamese refugees. He's doing these wonderful things for people, but then he can do something so terrible. But that reminds me of, like, who is it? John Wayne Gacy. You know, he was like a really good guy, but then he ended up being a really horrible guy. So, you know, serial killers can seem nice too. But yeah, Mark Chapman, he later went to a private Christian college where he began to fall off of his studies and even felt suicidal. He dropped out of college and broke up with his girlfriend. Oh yeah, he had a girlfriend. He managed that too. And I saw a video of her somewhere on the internet, and she like really cared about him, and she was even crying talking about him like after the horrible thing happened. Yeah, somehow he had a break. He eventually got work as a security guard, and I think this is where he first got his hands on guns. He somehow got access to guns around this time and then he moved to Hawaii. I'm not sure how he got the money to do this traveling, but yeah, he went to Hawaii. He also later traveled around the world. How? On a security guard income? Maybe he was from a rich family. It doesn't seem like it when I was reading. He tried to kill himself in Hawaii though. He tried it via carbon monoxide poisoning. So he had like hooked up his car how does it work? He hooked his exhaust pipe up to a hose, and then he was gonna like inhale the gases, but then apparently the hose melted and he didn't die. But soon after that, he was hospitalized for depression. Then, I guess because he's so likable, after he was released from the hospital, he started working at that very hospital. I'm telling you, he must have been charismatic. Because how does that even happen? In 1978, like I told you, he was traveling the world, including to Tokyo. Don't know where he got the money, but on this trip he met a woman who he married. Her name was Gloria. Things sound like they're looking up, but they weren't. He started drinking more, and he developed an obsession with John Lennon. Not just the Beatles. He always liked the Beatles, but now he was focused on John Lennon. He was focused on him because he felt that John Lennon was practicing hypocrisy, that John Lennon was talking about peace and love and no riches, like in his lyrics to the song Imagine. But he wasn't living it. He was rich. And also he had said, imagine there's no heaven. He was focused on this too, because that means John Lennon doesn't believe in God. Oh my God, how could he say that? It was so offensive to him. And he just felt it was all hypocrisy. And John Lennon also said in a statement one time that the Beatles were getting bigger than Jesus, which was possibly misinterpreted, because I'm not sure that he was really saying that he believed that, or that he was better than Jesus, or the Beatles were better than Jesus. He was just saying that people are going so crazy over the Beatles, they're going crazier over the Beatles than they are about God or Jesus. And that bothered Mark Chapman too. Chapman decided to go to New York City in 1980. And he went first, I believe it was October, November. And he was going to kill John Lennon. That was his plan. But he didn't. He said he saw a movie that gave him a sign that he shouldn't do it. So I think that, the mental place is not there for him. He went by a sign and he returned home. But he told his wife Gloria what he had attempted to do, or what he was planning to do. He even showed her the gun and the bullets. But she didn't report him or anything. I guess she didn't believe him, or didn't think he could do it. I'm not sure. But yeah, his wife never reported him. And he decided to schedule an appointment with a psychologist for himself. However, he never went. Instead, he returned to New York in December 1980. And this is where the terrible event happens. So when he's in New York City, he's planning to find John Lennon and shoot him. Before he does, I was surprised by this. Another singer is involved in this story. He ran into James Taylor. You know that singer of You've Got a Friend? He sings with Carole King a lot too. He ran into him and pushed him against the wall in a subway station. Why is James Taylor in a subway station? I don't know. I thought he was more famous than that, but good for him. He's like the normal people. But Mark Chapman pushes him against the wall and is talking crazy crap, like he's on drugs or on really drunk or something. He was telling James Taylor something about John Lennon, but it was kind of gobbledygoo, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. He didn't quite understand, but I don't think it was a death threat that James Taylor heard. I thought that was weird. Kind of odd that he would run into such a famous person, a famous and talented singer-songwriter, before he killed John Lennon. Not funny, but yeah. That was the day before the murder, and the next day, he went and hung around John and Yoko's apartment at the Dakota building near Central Park in New York City. And he was just like hanging around all day, basically. I don't know why he wasn't kicked out or something more happened, but I guess he couldn't be arrested for loitering. But maybe he went and came throughout the day. I'm not sure. But he was talking to people, and he actually saw John and Yoko's son coming in with whoever was taking care of him. And he shook the son's hand, whose father he was about to kill, and said something like good day, or I don't know what he said, but I was like, really? That is disgusting. Why would you talk to the child of the person you're going to kill? Ugh. That must be a horrible memory for the kid. I believe it was Sean. God, can you imagine? You shook the killer of your dad's hand before it happened? But he was so young, he probably doesn't remember, but it must be a disturbing story. Later in that day, when Mark Chapman was hanging around, John and Yoko left their apartment and they went to go to a recording studio. Mark Chapman actually talked to John as he exited and asked for an autograph. He had the album that John and Yoko had done called Double Fantasy, and John signed it. In fact, it was caught on camera by a photographer. I can't believe that happened. You know, I guess John Lennon and Yoko Ono were so famous. Of course, people were around all the time. Maybe that's how Mark Chapman was just like another fan, you know, probably seemed that way. So maybe people weren't so suspicious. But nothing happened to John yet, you know. He went to go record. And Mark Chapman stayed behind. And I mean, stayed around the apartment waiting for them to come back. And they did come back. John and Yoko returned that night. They apparently saw Mark Chapman. They apparently saw him like standing nearby, but they just walked by. I don't know if they thought it was creepy or just normal. Maybe normal with the amount of fans they had. But they walked by, and unfortunately, that's when Mr. Chapman took out a gun and shot John Lennon in the back. 5 times he shot, and 4 shots hit. And unfortunately, a legend, a genius perhaps in music, died. He was shot and killed by a man who was mentally unhinged, yet who was also a fan. In fact, he was so much of a fan that he took what John Lennon did very personally, his decisions, and decided to kill him. Chapman was arrested shortly after that, and he didn't put up any resistance, so I've read. He did make it clear, though, the reason he did this had to do with the book, The Catcher in the Rye. He said he felt like he was the main character, that teenager who was so annoyed or bothered by the fakeness in the world and who was looking for truth. Somehow, killing John Lennon was going to get this word out about this book, and people would look for the truth or something like that. In fact, he said, I have a quote, "I'm sure the big part of me is Holden Caulfield, the main person in the book. The small part of me must be the devil." I don't know if I believe any of that. I don't believe you could be the devil, and I don't believe you could be the character in the book. But if you're just using it as an analogy, yeah, I can see that. But I wouldn't make him out as a hero. I don't know why he thought this was a good thing to do. I still don't know why the book has made him want to do this. Whatever. I kind of get it, but it's just overboard. So John Lennon died in the hospital just shortly after the gunshots. And then there's Yoko Ono. Some people thought she was involved. I've heard that before. I even wondered, what I don't know why I wondered that, but you know, they always say like, if someone gets killed, look at the spouse first. But in this case, with all of the details, the evidence, everything I've read, I actually don't think Yoko Ono had anything to do with it. She was just there, you know? This guy was just crazy. The day after John Lennon's death, he was cremated. His ashes were scattered in Central Park, New York City, which later became known as Strawberry Fields. And I've been there. I didn't really know all the importance of it when I saw it, but now I do. You can go there to this day, Strawberry Fields. That name comes from a place where John Lennon liked to go as a child, I believe. Mark Chapman was sent for a psychiatric evaluation. He was charged with second-degree murder. He couldn't be charged with first-degree murder for some reason in New York. I don't know why. Isn't that obviously first-degree? He shot him. People saw it. But somehow it was second-degree. Okay. He couldn't be charged with first-degree. He pled guilty to the murder, even though his legal counsel told him, you should plead insanity, but he wanted to plead guilty because he said it was God's will. Yeah, I don't think it's God talking to you, Mark. He was sentenced to, I don't know how this exactly works, but he was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison, but he could get parole or be eligible for parole after 20 years. And he's never gotten the parole. And he's still in prison at the Wend Correctional Facility in Alden, New York. He has tried to get parole over and over and over and over, but he's been denied. So that's good. Thank goodness. He deserves that. I would be sad or disturbed if he got out. Ugh. He doesn't deserve it. He destroyed a legend of music. He destroyed John Lennon and the lives of all the people around him and hurt just tons of people, including me and his fans, but the people close to him too. So yeah, he deserves to be there. Yoko Ono continued her music and art to this very day. She still lives in the Dakota, where she lived with John before he died. And you can see that building, but maybe you should just leave her alone, give her privacy. And John Lennon's children, Sean and Julian, are still making music, singer-songwriters like their father. Check them out. Yeah, and Chapman is still in prison. But that is the unfortunate story about John Lennon being shot by Mark David Chapman. He was crazy. I think he got what he deserved. Some people would say death penalty. I do not think so. Well, I don't know. Let's not talk about the death penalty. That's a tough subject, and people feel different ways about it, and so do I. At least justice was served in some way. He is behind bars and has been for quite a long time. I guess that's the story, y'all. If you have any thoughts on this story, or if I missed anything, which I probably did, please feel free to comment below, and I will interact, respond as much as possible. Also, if you think this would be a good idea for a series, like dark stories around music, around the music industry, please let me know. And what should I call it if I do? I was thinking, like I said earlier, like dark songs? Midnight songs, midnight music. I don't know. If you have ideas, let me know. And I see a good one, I'll take it and go with it. And I'll give you credit, like in the next video. But no money, sorry. Please do support me on my Patreon. The link is below. And don't forget to subscribe and like this if you want to see more content. I do various kinds of content around music, and I'm sort of coming up with new ideas and seeing what sticks, what people like, and maybe this will be one I go with here on out. So yeah, let me know, please. If you let me know, then I'll know it's working, and that it's something y'all are interested in seeing more of. And much love and condolences to the family of John Lennon, who to this day probably feel a great loss. Thank you very much. Goodbye.